What's going on, sports fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Double Team Talk Show. Robert, let's run it down for him.
So it's all NBA playoffs this week, and we're gonna focus on the bubble teams and what we think they're gonna do, and see if they're gonna get in or be out when it comes to making the playoffs, and even just making that first four in, as well as our top two picks for MVP. So Jackson, what do you think about the bubble teams in the East, and who do you think you have staying in and who's staying out?
So for me, I think for the East, I think there's three teams that can make the playoffs. I got the Charlotte Hornets, kind of like the surprise sleeper team. I got the Miami Heat, the former Eastern Conference champs, and I also got the Washington Wizards. I think these three teams will make the best bids to get into the playoffs. The Wizards, right now, they're out of it. They're the 11 seed. But they just won a game today, and now they've overtaken the Bulls for that 10th seed. I think they have a real chance. Obviously, in the playoffs, you got to have star power, and I think they got Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook that can carry them through that play-in tournament. For the Miami Heat, I just think they have the playoff experience. You know, they've been struggling with injuries this season. I think they'll get it all together at the end of the year, and they'll definitely be in the playoffs. And then the Charlotte Hornets, I don't know, Robert. There's something about them without LaMelo Ball. They're a bunch of scrappy players, and I think they'll scrap their way right into the playoff.
I agree with you on the Wizards, because they've won 6 in a row. I think they're going to carry that momentum for these last 12 games. Even if they split them 6-6, I think they'll be just fine. They'll definitely do enough to make the playoffs, especially with Russell Westbrook picking up his offensive efficiency, because that had been the biggest talking point, the biggest struggle he's had all year. And I'm going to say, if Zach LaVine can come back before the last 8 games of the season, I have the Bulls taking that number 10 spot, because the team I see falling out are the Indiana Pacers and the Miami Heat. I wouldn't be surprised if they took a fall, just because of the fact of how hard injuries have hit their season. So overall, I just think that the Bulls, don't be surprised if you see them playing in that number 10 seed against the number 7 seed early this year.
That is it's a little bit of wishful thinking there. You know, I want the Bulls to get in there too. What you got for the West playing games?
So the West, it's a little bit easier to me. I think that the 4 teams that are in right now are going to be the 4 teams that stay. The Warriors, Stephen Curry's been ridiculous. It's insane what they've been doing. He's leading them to solid wins against really good teams by himself. So I think that with productivity from the role players and from the bench, they will be just fine. The Grizzlies, I love watching the Grizzlies. Jaren Jackson Jr. is hinted to be back soon, so that could be a very good addition for them, especially with more help with on the big man side, because the Grizzlies are very good in terms of wings and guards, but their big men are lacking a little bit, since they really only have Valanciunas, and he's on the last legs of his career. And the Spurs are good enough to make the playoffs. However, I wouldn't be surprised if they stayed in that 9 spot and just didn't move. So they wouldn't make that 8, but they would still make the play-in, the first 4, and then the Mavericks. The Mavericks are good. I don't think you have to worry about them. They are on the 7th seed, so it seems like they're hanging on, but I think they'll be just fine.
I completely agree with most of the things you just said there. The Warriors, I think that their team is, I don't like their team at all. I think they're pretty bad, but you know who I do like? I like Steph Curry, and I think that he's going to lead them there. Even if they just make it to the playing game, I think the Warriors are getting into at least the 8th seed this year. Steph Curry is playing on another level right now. And in terms of my second team that could make it into the playoffs from that play-in tournament, you know, I think Coach Pop can pull it off. I really like the Spurs' young core. They've drafted well these last few years. They've got a lot of depth in that team, a lot of young depth, a lot of rising stars. And I think they can beat out teams like the Mavericks, who lack depth, and other teams like the Grizzlies, who just aren't experienced. So those are my 2 teams. Kind of, I'm gonna ride the hot hand with Steph Curry, and then a little sleeper pick with the Spurs.
Okay, yeah, I definitely understand that. But on to our MVP picks. I'm gonna carry over from the Warriors, and here's the thing: I think Steph Curry is definitely would be in the top 2 of my MVP voting. But if he can lead the Warriors to not even make the playoffs, but if they finish over 500, he's hands down my MVP pick. Just because if you think about it, it's most valuable player. If the Warriors did not have Steph Curry this season, they would be picking number 2 again, and so. I think overall, Stephen Curry, the way he's been playing, which is next level, his numbers are matching his unanimous MVP season. So I think you can't compete with that. Nobody else has had that same productivity or increase like this all season. So it's Steph Curry, hands down. And then for my second pick, I think you got to give it to Joel Embiid. Through the early season injuries for the 76ers, he's been the person to get there and keep that number 1 seed for the 76ers pretty much all year. So that productivity and the just ridiculous superstar play out of both of them, those are my top 2 picks. Jackson, what do you think?
Steph Curry. I would have to agree. Steph Curry would be my pick for MVP, but I don't think he's going to win it this year. As you know, historically, the MVP, it's very tied in with how the team performs. And I think Steph Curry is the most valuable player to his team, but I don't think that he can win the MVP with a team that's struggling to be 500. Instead, I replace him with Nikola Jokic, a guy who basically the Nuggets run their whole offense around. He is one of the most versatile players in NBA history, putting up incredible numbers every single night, career highs all over the place. So he's my number 2 pick, but my number 1 pick, I have to agree, Joel Embiid. Even though he missed those couple weeks in the middle of the season, the Sixers are still at the top. And since he's been back, he's been averaging over 30 points per game, and he's been absolutely spectacular this season.
And I know we have 12 games left and it's winding down, but I just want to know who your finals pick is. Way too early, even though we're in the middle of the season. Who do you have going to the finals?
Man, you know, there's a lot of options out there. From the East, you got the big 3 of the Sixers, Nets, and Bucks. Yeah, I want to say the Nets out of the East, but I'm worried about their injury problems. I'm going to go with the 76ers out of the East and give me the Clippers. Give me the Clippers out of the West. I think they'll make a little redemption run.
Yeah, and the thing is, every year we say 76ers, this is their year. This is their chance. This is their chance. And it never pans out, so I'm going to have to disagree with the 76ers. And for me, this is tough because it's either between the Bucks and the Nets. But I think that the way the Nets have been injury prone but you can't argue with consistent play. When that big 3 is healthy in Brooklyn, it's unstoppable. So to me, you can't beat the Nets in 7 games. So I got them coming out of the East, and the Lakers, they're going to enter the playoffs at a 4 or 5 seed. And I'm heavily biased, but I think that they will definitely make the finals just because if you got them at a 4 or 5 seed, they're playing the middle of the pack in the playoffs. So when you don't play the best teams until the very end of the playoffs, which would be your conference semifinals, conference championship, and you're completely healthy, I don't think there's a way to stop them. Because even though the Jazz have been performing at a ridiculous level, I think in 7 games, if it came down to the Lakers and the Jazz, a healthy Lakers team would definitely win.
I'd have to agree with that, Robert. I think the Lakers are heavily underrated due to their injuries this season.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Double Team Talk Show. For more, check us out on YouTube at MVHS Maine under the sports section, as well as following us on Twitter at MVHS Maine. I'm Robert Stewart and that's Jackson Corbett. We'll see you next week.